Well, hello everyone. So welcome to my 7th update on my Devlog series on Rogue of Vallas, and I have an update for everybody. So yeah, I like getting in the habit of doing a weekly update, but a few things. I skipped last week, in part because of the holiday in the U.S. Also, I've just been really busy at work, so I haven't had a lot of free time to work on this. Of course, over the holiday, I did have some free time, so I was able to at least get, I think, some good progress done. So, if you haven't seen the previous logs, basically what I'm working on is redoing the state manager. And what the state manager is the code that manages for the most part, the animations for the player character and eventually the other characters as well. But not so much just the animations. So, stencil. I would imagine most of my viewers here are well familiar with Stencil, but just in case you're not, it's a game development platform, and I guess just look at my previous devlogs because I show a lot of little scenes with Stencil code and that sort of thing. But just in short, basically what you do is you create actors and you give them functionality by adding behaviors. And if you're coming from a more traditional, I mean, by the way, Stencil is a visual programming, but if you're coming from more traditional programming, then I think objects and classes and that sort of thing. Behaviors essentially add functionality, just like you would add functionality to a class by adding class methods. So, yeah, updates. So, what do I think about this so far? And, well, let me show you. I mean, that's just the best way. By the way, I'm using a new screen capture tool. It's called OBS. This is, I assume, multi-platform, but of course this is the Linux version. And I'm kind of enjoying it so far. I've been having fun just kind of playing with it a little bit, and I'm hoping it solves a problem. So I was using this thing called Kazam. It's very simple, easy to set up, but the downside, I don't know if you noticed this, but the audio and video weren't quite syncing correctly. And one thing is I have my microphone right in front of me, but I also have the speakers off to my left that play sound. And you can probably hear an echo. If you go back to some of the previous videos, you might see that. There's a little bit of an echo because you hear it in the speakers, and then about half a second later you hear it, actually from the line capture. And that was a little annoying, in particular because my commentary didn't always sync up with what was happening in the game. And I like to show, different scenes from the game, such as this. So let me kind of show off what I have here. So first of all, maybe look, if you missed them, look at my older videos where I have the original animation manager. And the animation manager supported arcade-style movements. And for example, the player character, her name's Marika. You can see when she turns around now, she has an actual turning around animation, as opposed to just a simple immediately facing the other way, which is more arcadey. This is more, I guess what I'm going for is more in the line of what you'd call a cinematic platformer. Although you can kind of see here the traditional cinematic platformer, at least the way I think of them, is you have a player character that has realistic abilities, maybe very, very athletic, but still within the realm of plausibility. Whereas you can see Marika here; she's jumping almost her entire height. So it's a little more in the arcadey direction, but there's still quite a few elements of the cinematic platformer. And kind of the gimmick with this game is that the more power you get, the more over the top your movements become. Sort of like going from regular person to action hero kind of thing. So I wanted to exaggerate the progression that the player feels as they progress through the game, so that when they get to the very end, I mean, they're clearly over the top, maybe jumping 2 or 3 times their height or that kind of thing. So I thought it'd be a fun way to, a little twist on the typical cinematic platformer style. So the problem with this, the code's working great, but the problem with the code is it has enabled me to get a little too creative with the animations, and now I'm having a gameplay problem. And you can kind of see a little bit like that. I mean, that's realistic if these were ice blocks. So I've done a good job making ice blocks. Now, I've mentioned before that one of my inspirations, I guess you could call it, is Prince of Persia. And I want to bring that game up in a little bit because I can. Oh, you can charge punches now. You can't kick. I don't have all the animations set, but I have a lot of them. You can do that. You can turn in midair. I mean, that one I actually really like. You can slide, of course. Maybe in another update I'll focus more on the code because I want to try and keep these updates, short and to the point as possible. So I'll show some of the code later. But there's little things that need to be fixed. But yeah, the sliding is one of the worst. And the other one's responsiveness. So, for example, here I'm going to push the jump button and see she immediately jumps. It wasn't like that. I had to really go in. Let's see if he hits. Oh, come on. Yeah, so now she falls off correctly. So that was another thing that was kind of broken in the original game, is taking damage is actually one of the more complex states there is, because there's different ways you can take damage, and that's, I think, surprisingly important. In particular, if you get hit and nothing happens, it kind of sets you up to, I guess, get hit again. I wonder if there's a way I can get back to the menu. There's not. We're going to find out together how well OBS handles me just closing this window. Of course, now it goes to a blank screen here. There. So there's stencil. So I'm going to run this game again. Let's see, can I do this? Hey, look at that. All right. I'm really liking OBS. Loirin on the Stencil Discord channel is the one that clued me in on this. Yeah, this is much better than what I had before, where you just kind of see the whole monitor at once, and I can zoom in right on the action here. So, the infamous high security compound. So yeah, I want to show off what's important about taking damage. In particular here, I can see she gets pushed back a little bit, but it pushes her back into safety. It just makes it quite a bit easier for the player to get back in the game. Of course, let's see if I can get this. Oh, she just got regular died. Yeah, that was the part that wasn't working. There's different ways of falling, there's different ways of getting hit, and that's one of the more complex transitions within the game. Surprisingly, what I thought would be the hardest to implement is grabbing onto ledges. But you can see that actually cleaned up very nicely. Of course, that needs to be fixed. I don't know, maybe that's realistic. I mean, in the original game, you just stop and you couldn't move forward if you're touching a wall. But anyway, if nothing else, the nice thing about this state manager is that it's easier to work with when things go wrong, and that's something I talked about previously. The typical way you handle animations in Stencil is I can show you. I mean, like I said, I think most of my viewers here are Stencil users, so I don't think this will be news to that many of you, but I'm hoping I can draw some interest in people who are not Stencil users, and if nothing else, kind of show you how you can use this to make a game. Not that that's not my intent, though. I mean, this isn't a tutorial series, but typically what you do with animations is you use these animation blocks to switch animations, and that does pretty much what you would expect to do. It switches the animations. So, these are all the animations I have. The whole point of the state manager is to associate each state the character could be in with an animation or a set of animations, and that's the case with, say, falling. Let me see if I can find the falling code here. So you can see falling, when I activate falling, so when the state activates, it triggers the update animation. Update animation sets, never mind, that's not the best one, because I forgot, there's two different falling states. What's one that has multiple animations? There's one one of these that has multiple animations. I don't remember off the top of my head which one it was. May have been not falling. Well, dying is particularly complicated, like I said. Oh, getting hit. That was it, getting hit. Let me show you that one. So when you take damage, you can see this is quite a bit more complex than the other state I showed off, and you can probably also see I have a ton of these states. So yeah, I've been very busy with this. So typically I would update the animation when, when the character enters that state, because I actually commented that one out. So when you take damage, such as, where's the health manager? I got a lot of tabs open right now. It's making this a little hard to navigate. Now, when you take damage, there's actually different types of damage. Major damage, minor damage, and flying damage, which say you get uppercut. And you go, whee, flying in the air backwards. So the way I handle that sort of thing is I go into the state, and then since these states behaviors don't take variables, I have to do customizations using events, but that works really well actually. So no complaints there. And let me go back to the damage state behavior here. So these different types of damage will change the animation, and that actually updates the animation, and then there we go. By the way, I have my own animation changing behavior because, and I talked about this in the previous update, I have per frame hitboxes, which is not a standard in Stencil. Typically in Stencil you have per animation hitboxes. You can see here if I go to collisions, I do have the default Stencil based collision boxes mainly for physics purposes, running on ground, for example, that sort of thing. But as far as detecting hits, I have my own custom code that updates the hitboxes per frame of the animation, as opposed to one box for the whole animation. And to do that, I had to kind of hijack the Stencil provided animation block. And so when I set the animation, there's the original block, but I also have to force a frame update as well. And that's just simple. Just set the last frame to -1. So that every time the frame number changes, the code knows to go back in and update the hitboxes. So I talked about that in detail in previous update. That's something you're interested in learning how to do. Again, not that it's a tutorial, but I'd say, recommend go look at my video and see if that kind of helps you get started. So Prince of Persia. Like I said, I wanted to show off Prince of Persia, and I also want to show off that I learned how to use OBS here. I almost said OBX. OBX is Outer Banks, North Carolina. So DOSBox. Yeah, there we go. Transition to DOSBox. And that is not... Okay, good. That's centered how I want it. So this is the demo version of Prince of Persia that I had when I was a kid. We never bought the full game. This only has the first 2 levels. But I would sit here and play with this quite a bit just because, I don't know, it's just kind of stirred the imagination up a little bit, just wanting to know what's behind the next curtain. And yeah, we got this off of HAL PC, and not to get into that too much, but those of you that were growing up in the 80s and 90s may remember that before you had the internet, you had BBSs, bulletin board systems, and HAL PC was the Houston Area League of PC Users. The best way I can describe it, if you have no idea what this kind of thing is imagine that you connect to a website by calling it with your phone through a modem, as opposed to using a web browser. So, call up the website, so to speak, the BBS, and then you can download games or other things. And Houston had a good one. HAL PC, I got a lot of games from HAL PC, including this. So we'll play Prince of Persia, the first 2 levels. And, okay, I'm going to set the audio down here. So hopefully I can talk. Let's see that. Yeah, I hope that's good. I'm going to turn it down on my speakers too, so it's not on the microphone so much. Okay. So, it's loud. There. Okay, so I hope you all can hear me over this. That was a problem I noticed in one of my other videos. This was pointed out to me that The line capture was sometimes too loud. Alright, so one thing I've actually kind of grown to appreciate a little bit more is just how much went into this game. Apparently not the ability to control it. Ah, okay. Actually, can I get my mouse? Yeah, I want my mouse cursor back. I'll try and hide that. So, not that I'm trying to copy this, because I really don't. I mean, I've grown to appreciate this game quite a bit more than I did when I was little, but there are still things I don't like about it. You know, I mean, nothing against Jordan Mechner. I mean, this was certainly an accomplishment, especially at the time. But sometimes when you like something, at least some people, like myself included, it actually kind of makes you more willing to take a critical look at it. I mean, I like this game, but I don't. I don't like playing it. I like everything about this game, except I find it really kind of boring. I mean, as a game, I can't say I really like it all that much, but certainly as a programming feat, it's great. I think the problem with the game is there's just not enough variation. I mean, I think I've talked about this before. I mean, as a game, the first 2 levels I remember playing a lot, and I in a previous video I talked about how my brother and I would just draw our own levels for this, and we'd fill up reams of tractor feed paper drawing huge levels. So one day I got to play this, and after I got to level 3 or 4, I just kind of got bored. Maybe it's because I'm older. Maybe it's because games got more sophisticated since this was released. I mean, this was, I think, 1989. I don't know. I mean, but one thing I noticed is just lots of little quality of life kind of things. Like watch when you slide. Like, see, there's where that sliding comes from, but it doesn't feel unresponsive. I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm used to the other controls, but I'm trying to jump right now, and he doesn't jump. Whereas in my game, during this sliding state, if you push the jump button, it actually cues that jump, and then when Marika enters an animation where she could jump, that jump is cued, and it works. I don't know, maybe it's because I don't have enough animations. It just didn't feel responsive implementing it the way it's implemented here. The other thing is, watch that. Like, he just slid right over the edge. And in my game, I could do that. I could do that pretty easily. It would just be a matter of changing the hitbox so that it hangs over the edge a little bit. I don't like that either. I mean, it looks weird, but at the same time, it's more fair. Like, it gives you, like, it doesn't give you a lot of leeway, but I mean, you saw the past couple of attempts. Like, he was clearly over the edge. Let's see if I can make that happen again. Yeah, like that. He was clearly over the edge. Like, he had 1 foot, no feet now, in the air. It's like Wile E. Coyote kind of movements. Yeah, that I think is more fair. Especially this game, because it only gives you an hour to get through this. But again, I don't like it. So, what I would like to do... Oops. Well, I don't want to do that. Man, that really just clobbered him. I thought I had more hit points. Let me see if I can do that again. This has nothing to do with my update now. I just want to prove to myself I can still beat this level. So, yeah, the problem is trying to implement like quality of life kind of things so the player doesn't just kill themselves so easily. That was a mistake. I need to get that button. That's the skeleton pit. That's what we always called it. My mom, she, when I was that little, she didn't work. She stayed at home with me and my brother. And sometimes we did all play these games together. And I think she was the one that called that the skeleton pit, because the first time one of us fell into that, there's a big skeleton at the bottom. Like I said, we got a lot of mileage out of these little demos. Hey, look at that. Didn't even have to hang off of that. Now, one thing I forgot how to do is sword fight. Let's see. I remember how to get across that. Oh, I want to get that thing. Yeah, I might have to figure out how to get a camera feed into this thing, because I definitely made a face right there. It was not the face of excitement. Anyway, let's go back to this thing. So, goodbye. Enough of that. So, I can show you now Rogue of Vallas. Again, just for a little compare and contrast. Oh, I can turn my volume back up too now. See, my game has quieter audio for some reason. We'll go back to this one. Okay, so yeah, Marika slides around, but not much tighter actually. And I actually think that's too much sliding. Like, now that I think about it, you know, I don't think Prince has a name. Maybe he does, Prince of Persia. Maybe it's the character formerly known as Prince. I don't know. But one thing I'm thinking of is with all that sliding around, and you know, you saw him, he was barefoot. He's probably not going to have any feet left by the time he finishes that game. Whereas Marika, you know, she turns around much more tighter. And maybe one thing I need to do is just record myself running around. I mean, that's what Jordan Mechner did. He recorded his brother, just, you know, doing all the motions you see in the game, and maybe he did slide that much. I don't know. It didn't feel right to me when I implemented it, and it feels right in Prince of Persia, but I think that's because the levels are designed around it. And I didn't want my level design to be that restrictive, so it's just a matter of finding a balance. This level is going to make a very good test, because I know how this level plays, and I know how I want it to play, and if I can't get in a P rating, so P is the perfect rating, if I can't get a P rating in this after, you know, some practice, I don't like it. Not that I'm a perfectionist, but that's been my gameplay test. You know, if it feels good to me, then I think I can be satisfied with it. But if I don't like the way it feels, certainly I can't expect the players to. So that's a pretty good test here, is how this level works. Let's see, Marika, see if I can climb up here. So when she does that little slide thing, bloop, she just falls off. So I don't know how I'm going to handle that. Maybe I could have her slow down and turn. One thing I haven't done yet, this by itself may help. If I just tap the key in the direction she's facing, she does a little kind of slide step thing, like a sneak up. But if I turn around, she does that still. Like if I turn to the left, she still does that. So I've drawn all the images for this, but I have not yet implemented it. I do have a state almost ready to go where she just turns around and she doesn't do that little side step. Another thing that was kind of an issue with this game is turning around in the air. So in the original game, you could just turn around in midair, and I re-implemented that to an extent. I think this is more realistic, and I'm starting to like it better. And I think that's one thing I need to be careful about, is to not think I'm on the wrong track just because it's different than what I'm used to. Because it could be better. You know, when I make changes and I get worse at the game, of course, my first thought is, well, it's not good, because now I'm worse at the game than I was before. But with some practice, you know, it's just really better. And I think some of this is just going to be even just as simple as tweaking the art a little bit. You know, the code may be fine, the actual physics may be fine, but just kind of drawing the art a little bit so the player can more easily understand what's happening. I think that'll go a long way too. So I like the direction this is going, but it's harder than I thought, which doesn't surprise me. Like, when you do any code refactoring, you know, you have to expect it's going to be difficult to, you know, maybe not difficult, just time consumptive, and you have to expect there'll be surprises. But at the same time, one thing that kind of surprised me is not how much more difficult doing the coding was, more than getting the game to a state that I'm happy with in terms of art and motion and just the rules. That was a little surprising. I like the way this is going, but I think we're getting on to week 4 now since I started doing this, and yeah, it's taken a lot more time, but I think the game will be a lot better for it. Like, I already feel like I'm moving in the right direction. It's just going to be a matter of polishing things. So That's all I got for you all. So thank you for watching. And I'm hoping in the next update I'll have a finished, fully working state manager, but probably not. Anyway, see you next time.